Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves as managers of a brewery empire where we'll be trying to defeat the gnomes and other players and claim the regions of Brewmanica by winning the loyalty of beer customers. Rise of the Gnomes is an area control game for 1 to 5 players, plays in 60 to 150 minutes, is for ages 12 and up, and published by August Games. Now it can be played in solo, competitive, cutthroat, or cooperative modes. Now it's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works from a competitive standpoint, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are prototypes. You're going to want to check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video to see all the final art and components. Now this game has different modes of play. You could play competitively, cutthroat, co-op, solo. This is going to be showing you how to play the competitive game. Now here we have a dragon keep, and here are the gnomes. This game's called Rise of the Gnomes for a reason, because you need to be able to outscore the gnomes in addition to the other players in order to win. So here we have a 2-player game set up with specific tiles laid in specific ways, and we have the starting player set up as well as the gnomes. Now each player is going to select a color, and from that color they're going to be able to select which board and which side they'll use, and each of these boards, they work a little bit differently. Like for example, we have the humans, the goblins, the merfolk, or the vampires. Whereas say the green player could choose from the dwarves, the giants, the dark elves, and the humans, and even this humans is slightly different from the red player's board humans. And so this is how my board might look like if I was set up as the red human player. Now here's the scoreboard for the game. The game is played over 5 rounds, and each round has 6 phases. So after the end of the 5th round, whoever has the most points is going to win. And here I have points for the red player, the green player, and the gnomes, because again, you have to be able to beat both the opponent and the gnomes in order to win, because if the gnomes have the most points at the end, they win and neither of the players do. So let's walk through these phases of a turn and tell you how things work. This first phase is called the Allies phase. Now in this phase, you'll put out a number of cards equal to the number of players plus 1. And in this case, I put 4 out there because I want to show you the 4 different types of cards. One of them are one-time rewards with this icon, and some of them will just give you straight points. You'd draft that card and you'd get 2 points, and then the next player would draft with what is left. Now, some of them are boosts, like this one. Now, it'll give you a point, but it'll also give you a boost when you take a certain action. Some of them are immediate action spaces, like this. You get to add this next to your board, and it's a private action space that you can use. And some of them are upgrades like this. Not only does it get you a point, but when you bribe the dragon, it's for 1 less gold, for example. So these are the different types of cards that you might be able to see. And because there's the amount of cards equal to the number of players plus 1, once all the players have drafted, there's 1 card left, and if that card has points, it goes to the gnomes, so you have to be careful what is left to them. Now the next phase we go to is the assigning the brewer meeples. And players will start with a certain amount of those depending on the amount of players. Now players will take turn in a clockwise order placing a brew meeple, and there's different types of spaces, some of them with exclamation points. These are immediate brewer spaces, and you can find some on your own board, you can find some on some of the cards you may have drafted, and you'll find these on the action board. Now if they're round like this, then only 1 brew meeple can be in each of those. So for example, you might go something like this to hire a bar. This means you can spend a coin to add one of your customer cubes to an adjacent tile to where you have some cubes in. So for example, you take one from here. You always take from left to right, because as you unlock and you empty these out, these will give you different rewards in a certain phase later that I'll talk about. And so I have some cubes here, so I can put it into an adjacent spot like this, for example. Now, any place you have something is considered you occupy it, and any place that you actually have the most market strength, you control it. And each customer cube is worth 1, and each brewery is worth 2. So here I have a market strength of 1. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example. Or maybe I want to go here, spend 3 coins, and build a brewery. And so you always build the one that's closest to the top here. Now, you'll be getting points and coins for all of the spots that you've unlocked here a little bit later in the game, but you will get an additional production here, so you move that up like that. So you can add that brewery to a tile you control, and as I spoke about earlier, I now control this one, and you can't build it in places like the sea and things like that. And typically you can just have one brewery on a tile unless there's a special ability that says otherwise. And anytime you place next to a face down tile, this will get revealed. Ooh, and this is the sea layer, which means you get the dragon from the board, and it will go here, and we'll tell you how this works in a later phase. Now, once you place a worker, it's the next player's turn, but let's talk about the different ones. This one allows you to turn in 3 of the beer barrels in for 3 coins. Or maybe you want to go to the brewery upgrade and spend 3 coins to get an upgrade token. So you get an upgrade token from the supply, and you can place it on one of these upgrade slots, and you'd get what it says there. Like this case, it says increase beer production by 1 with expansion, so we move this up by 1. Now this is important for a few reasons, as I'll talk about later. The further down you are, the more points you'll get during a certain phase. But also I wanted to show you about this brew beer, because this is a spot, and because it's oval, it means you can place more than 1 there. You're only placing 1 at a time, but this allows you to get exactly how many beer barrels is your production. So I would immediately get 7 beer barrels to put to my resources. Or maybe you go here, Oktoberfest, spend 3 coins, get a point, and you can do that multiple times. Or you go here into Employ Thugs, you spend 2 coins, and you'll be able to put 2 of your cubes in a spot and kick out 2 of where the gnomes are. So this allows you to, again, take off up to 3 gnome cubes. So you can take these as they go back on their board, and I'd take 2 from my board and place them here, for example. Now, when you're placing workers, you can also place them on some of these cards that are out there. We'll tell you how this happens in just a moment, but you'll place it. You don't pay for it or do this action now like you do with the other actions. But once all players are done with placing workers, we then go to the play action cards phase. And here from top to bottom, left to right, you will resolve these cards, and each card gets resolved from top to bottom. So this player will take their worker back, and they'll need to pay that 1 beer barrel, and then they can take that action, and then the green player will then have to pay again 2 beer barrels, and they'll take that action. You can always substitute a coin for a beer barrel in this case, but these just, and then once this is done, this goes left to right, and then left to right, just like that. And these do different things, like taking 3 customer cubes from your board and placing them on a tile that you occupy. Or caravanning, moving up to 5 of your customer cubes from a single tile to 1 or more adjacent tiles. Or barrel delivery, taking 3 cubes from your customer board and putting it into an adjacent tile to one that you already have some cubes that you occupy. Or with the beer competition, you take 2 cubes off in a place that you have 1 and give it back to them, and then you put 2 from your board on there. Or you can expand, find a place that you have a tile where you control and place one of your breweries. Now, another aspect about these breweries is as you work your way down, you might unlock other upgrades, which then you can then place and do different things with those. For example, normally you can't place breweries in a desert tile, but this allows you to do so. After you're done with all that, we'll go to the Play Gnomes cards. This is where the gnomes are going to be playing cards. They'll play 5 different cards, but as the game gets longer and longer, they're actually going to get 7 cards to play in the last 2 rounds. And so let's look at one of these gnome cards. First thing that's going to happen is the dragon's going to move, assuming the dragon is already out on the board. By the way, now that you know about the dragon, there is a spot where you can spend 3 gold to do dragon tribute during the previous phase I talked about to move the dragon to adjacent spots. Now in this case, it's going to move to an adjacent, that's what the straight arrow means, to one of these tiles like this. So I will go like this, and now the dragon is going to rampage. However, the dragon might collect some bribes from you if you want to. Now here in the first round, you only have to bribe him a coin, but as it gets, the game goes on, it gets more and more expensive to bribe the dragon. Also, if I don't bribe the dragon, it will burn down my brewery and a certain amount of the customer cubes depending on what round you're in. So I can just pay 1 and just be fine, or if I don't, he'll burn down a brewery and 2 cubes. And if that happens, they get placed off the board and back onto here in the reverse order that you took things off. And sometimes instead of moving adjacent, you see this, and that means the dragon actually flies to there. So there's different ways that the dragons move. Then there's going to be actions. You'll take this one. If you can't take it, you'll take this one. If you can't take it, you do this. So here the gnomes are going to place 3 of their cubes in a spot that they already have, which means they're occupied. And first they're going to try to do it in one of these tiles. If it's not there, then this one. If it's not there, then this one. So we look to see if he has control here. If so, we will place 3 cubes off their board onto there. So in this case, there is one of those tiles, so they'll place the 3 cubes there. Now, if there was more than one of these tiles types, you'd look at this icon list from left to right, and you would, if this was there, you would put it on one of those. If not, you go here, and so on and so forth for the tiebreaker. Now, we just did one of these cards. You're going to do 4 more in this set of the game, 5 cards. Now, after that's done, and you do all those cards, we'll go to the score points and collect gold. So we'll look over here first and we'll see for every one of these rows that you've passed, you'll get a certain amount of points. So right now we're in this row, we've completed this one, we'd get 1 point. If we were here, we would get 3 points, for example. So we'll get that from your beer production. You're also going to get any gold or points from places that you had created your breweries from. So in this case, we're going to get 2 coins here, 1 coin here, and a point. Then we're going to look at the customer boxes, and each of these boxes that we've completed or moved all the customers out, we'll get that. So in this case, we'll get a point. We won't get anything here because there's still a customer there, but if this was gone, we would additionally get a coin. So you do that for all of these spots. You'd also get 2 points if you had a brewery where the Dragon Keep tile is. Now you're also going to do so for the gnomes. Here they get 3 points for this, they're getting a point and a coin for that, and so that works the same way. Then they'll also get a certain amount of points or minus a certain amount of points depending on the difficulty level. There's certain difficulty levels that they want you to start on depending on the amount of players. Here we start on beginner because we start with 2 players, so they'll get minus a point because if that's just the difficulty level that we chose for this game. And you update the score on the score track. Remember, the gnomes are scoring themselves, and then we sort of reset, which is essentially, bringing back your workers, putting the new action cards out, getting to the next round, things like that. If it was in the 5th round, it'd be the end of the game. Now at the end of the game, the players, not the gnomes, have an ability to possibly get more points. Because at the beginning of the game, they were given 3 judge cards, and they kept 2 of them secretly, and these were secret gold for them. So this says, hey, in this specific tile type, the swamps, if you have 1 or more, you'll get a certain amount of points throughout the at the end of the game. If you have 1 that's adjacent to a desert, you get a certain amount of points. So this gives you some focus at the beginning of the game that can turn into points to help you beat the gnomes in the end, and the other players. Now in between the 3rd and 4th round, each player will get 1 more of their brew meeples, and again you'll go through and do all of those phases in each round. You'll do that final scoring that I just showed you, and whoever has the most points wins. If it's a player, that player wins. If it's the gnomes win and none of the players win. Now there is a Cutthroat variant of the competitive game where you're still competing against each other against the gnomes, but it gives the players more control of the gnomes and is great for game groups who enjoy a high level of player interaction and treachery. Now at the beginning of the game, each player is going to get some gnome cards, a certain amount depending on the amount of players. You can look at them, but you'll keep them secret from other players, and you'll be getting, you'll be replacing these cards during the reset phase of the game. Now, when it is the play gnomes card phase, starting with the first player and going around clockwise, each of them gets to play 1 card, which means some of them might play a different amount of cards, and you'll need to know that going into that specific round. For example, let's say the red player played this card and the dragon's going to move to an adjacent mountain spot. They get to choose. They don't want to move him here because that's the red player, but there is another tile that's adjacent to the mountain, but it's the green player, so they'll likely move the dragon there. That player also gets to select the action. They must do the first one if they can, but if they're going to place it, they get to choose this. They don't go left to right like the regular game. So for example, the gnomes are going to place 1 of their cubes in a spot that's next to one if they have one. They have one here, and they can place it here, but they can just decide which one of these tiles to do. In this case, they'll pick this one because it can be right there against the green player, but if they wanted to place it on one here or here, they could. So it gives you the more choices as to how to mess up your opponent using the gnome cards. And if it ever got down to the point where there was a tiebreaker, the player who played the card gets to say what the tiebreaker is. That's pretty much how the Cutthroat version works, although when you do get to the refresh phase, you will deal a certain amount of those gnome cards out to players depending on the amount of players. Now again, there is a cooperative and solo modes, and the cooperative version is going to be highlighted on my channel with a live stream playthrough next week from when this video launches, so subscribe to the channel below and you'll be able to see when this happens. Well, there you have Rise of the Gnomes, and as I showed in the overview, it's an area control game with multiple modes of play, including solo. Now, if you'd like to see the final art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video, and it will take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure the fine folks at August Games would love your support.